Good morning, Uganda. A beautiful day it is today. Government of the Republic of Uganda, under the visionary leadership of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has taken definitive steps towards building the indigenous mobility industry as a way of creating employment opportunities, but also leveraging our endowment in a wide range of minerals to fuel the transformation of Uganda into an upper middle income economy by making a wide range of vehicle products that are competitive, not only for the domestic but also the regional market with the complementary services. Today, we bring to you a talk show discussing the tenets and the imperatives of what is happening today in the country towards realizing a scalable, competitive, and sustainable mobility industry value chain in Uganda, producing over 500,000 vehicles with 65% localization by 2030. And to start off this segment, we have Mr. Edwin Agaba and Dr. Cosmas Mwikilize, who is locally manufacturing electronic control units that can be used in vehicles and other appliances. I want also to mention here that this show is brought to you by the Secretariat of Science, Technology and Innovation in the Office of the President through the leadership of Honorable Dr. Monica Msenero, the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Office of the President, in partnership with Private Sector Foundation and Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. Edwin, tell us about your work.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you to our viewers. Engineer Edwin Agaba. I head the Electric Mobility Research Program of International University of East Africa. And specifically, this is now program is in its 5th year since it began. And we have quite a number of innovations we've been working on, but specifically the program we've run for 5 years now is designing, development, and production of an electric motorcycle. And specifically, why I went into that industry, it began as a competition in 2015. It was a competition sponsored by United Nations Environment Program on Clean Air Africa. And we submitted our project idea of an electric motorcycle, and we won a grant. And that grant is what really kicked us off to begin on this project. And the current motorcycles we have on the market, Uganda alone has around 1.5 million motorcycles. And these are essentially internal combustion engine motorcycles. And they increase our urban pollution actually, but also in terms of revenue earnings for the riders, the owners. When you actually assess, the owners and riders are not earning sufficiently because of the costs on fuel, oils, and the rest. But also we realize the technology of today and the leaps we have made in technology development of battery technology, specifically lithium iron phosphate technology, we must go in the industry, and that's why we fielded an electric battery technology for the motorcycle. And specifically, our contribution to this project has been, one, the design. For the last 5 years, we are running the first prototype, which is the commercial prototype. So we've done 3 prototypes which are not commercial. And in the design, we are looking at specific unique features we can give the motorcycle that it can become highly commercial. One was on safety. Our motorcycle can be traced from everywhere and remotely. 2 was in battery. Our battery, currently what we are developing on, what we are running on our current first design prototype can do up to 120 kilometers on a single charge. But we have made some changes in the battery cells and also the modules, how they are arranged. And we hope to scale up in the early next year to up to 150 kilometers. Our target, our design philosophy is that we should be able to achieve between 150 to 180 kilometers on a single charge. We believe any motorcycle rider in a day, 180 kilometers should be sufficient for him to run through his day's activities. So that's our focus. And so the next prototype, next commercial prototype we're bringing in next year should be able to do up to 180 kilometers. Another key design we introduced in is that the beauty. We want to give it a unique beauty that when you see the electric motorcycle, you can completely differentiate it from the aesthetics. Completely differentiate it from the internal combustion engine motorcycles. Our motorcycle can do 210 kilogram load, that's the load, and it can also be able to charge our battery, can charge up within less than 2 hours, and using 1 kilowatt hour, which is around 750 shillings of domestic consumption. So we know if we can deliver 180 kilometers on 1 kilowatt hour, no internal combustion engine motorcycle can compete with the electric motorcycle. So that's our area of focus. The second focus of our project was on production of component parts or production parts. We are working with our Chinese contract manufacturer to produce the component parts. But what we have done, we have also selected at least 20 parts, which we have agreed to start production next year. We have already done the tests, both the material selection, the specifications, material testing has been done, and the designs we already had them. So we already selected the 20 parts, which we are going to begin with. Then, but of course, others we shall continue working with our contract manufacturer until we scale up to our target is up to 50% of the component parts. And lastly, the third aspect of the project is complete whole assembly. We are already doing locally now the 50 motorcycles we have on the market. We assemble them from here, but we intend to build a complete assembly line so that we can have all our production starting next year. We're looking at 5,000 motorcycles annually in the short term, the first 3 years, and we intend to do all of it here. Thank you.
Awesome. This is very, very, very interesting. We are having already 50 motorcycles made here, and we are now also looking at localizing some of the parts. And talking about parts, Dr. Cosmas, I know you're doing amazing, amazing work at Innovex in the area of electronics that enable vehicles and other applications. Please tell us about your work.
Thank you, Paul, and I greet your viewers. And it's amazing to be aboard this Kayoola. I'm getting the Kayoola experience. It's my very first time. I'm enjoying the safety, I'm enjoying the comfort, and I feel like I don't want to drive my legacy car anymore.
Awesome.
So my name is Cosmas Mwikirize. I am a lecturer at Makerere University in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. But I'm also a director at Innovex, which is a young, vibrant company that is at the forefront of manufacturing electronics in Uganda. Previously, I obtained some industrial experience in the United States at Philips Research North America, and this was when I was pursuing my doctoral program at Rutgers University. Now, Paul, if you will allow me, first of all, our interest in green mobility lies in the fact that Innovex is at the forefront of developing technologies that apply to sustainable energy sources as well as their related applications. And so why do we start talking about electronic control units when we're talking about vehicles? So when you think about an electronic control unit, think of a tiny computer that controls a particular function, particular system or subsystem in a vehicle. And the applications can be mission critical systems like braking. It could be security like door locks. It could also be comfort like the HVAC system that we're enjoying in this bus. Now, typical vehicles will have hundreds of these systems. I believe this bus has more than 100. So it's a decentralized architecture where all these components are able to perform their individual functions, but as well communicate together in order to achieve the aggregate functionality. Now, these ECUs can be made here, and I'm going to dwell on our experience at Innovex. So ECUs have a hardware component and they have a software component as well, or what we call the firmware. So, and then they take in a whole range of inputs from several sensors, and then they are designed to give particular output or actuation, be it in, let's say, controlling lights or controlling energy management, and so on and so forth. Now, it is estimated that by 2030, about 50% of the parts in electric vehicles will totally be electric. And that is why it's important for us to think of a strategy of making these parts here, because if we're able to, then we may substantially reduce on the cost of making these vehicles locally. Of course, long term, there's also the transition to software-defined vehicles, where instead of having hundreds of these units, you can have a few of these, and then you have the majority of the function being defined by the firmware. Now, Innovex has a range of products that are out there controlling solar systems and solar powered equipment, and we do all this in an end-to-end process. We design all the electronics here, we print them here, we test them here,
wow,
and then we market them here. We have about 1,000 of these units in solar home systems, in solar water pumps, in solar agro-processing machinery, and we're not just in Uganda. We have marketed these to other countries such as Kenya. I think we're in about 5 African countries now. Right. So when we started out, we were designing all these electronics here and manufacturing them in China. We had a contract manufacturer in China. But then there are attendant issues with contract manufacturing in China. You think of the lead time. You don't get what you want when you want it. So to address that, we have gradually set up our own manufacturing facility here that is able to print a state-of-the-art electronics. We call them printed circuit board assemblies. So you start out with a plain printed circuit board, and then depending on the application, you've already defined all the components that are going to be on this board, and so you place them on the board, and then you program the firmware for this board. And the processes that we go through for the products that we have now are exactly similar to what we would do if we're making electronic controller units for vehicles. So we have the capacity, we have the skill, we have built the competence, and if I may, the ecosystem for this kind of activity is diverse. It wouldn't just be us. We would also be looking at universities, because there's this kind of antiquated thinking that we can't make electronics in Uganda, so we would change that. So students who are learning electronics in universities would have an application avenue for that knowledge. And of course, we'd be creating highly skilled jobs. We would be ensuring that we create a lot of intellectual property and it stays here. And then we'd also be ensuring that we have just-in-time manufacturing, and would also develop the skill to repair and maintain these electronic control units here.
So it's interesting to see that as a nation, we are not only now developing capabilities to make the whole vehicle, just like the Kayoola EVS bus, which we are sitting on today, but we are also seeing opportunities arising in the making of the electric bikes, and also developing high-tech components for these vehicles is taking off. The time is right more than ever before for us to strengthen these leopard skin sport efforts, so that we can move to scale and create more opportunity for Uganda and move Africa to the level where we would wish it to be. Thank you, Cosmas. Thank you, Engineer Edwin Agaba. Keep on keeping on. Let's transform Uganda into an upper middle income economy through industrialization.
I'm a director and a project manager here at Innovex. We design the boards and manufacture them end to end, which means we can make any board for any custom application. So we design the board well knowing what the inputs are supposed to be, what the outputs are going to be, what the specific function of that board is going to be, and then we also specify all the components that are going to actuate that function on the board. And at the end of the day, we have a complete schematic of the board. This is a small computer that is custom made to control and monitor energy systems, off-grid energy systems. So in the context of vehicles, we can make boards like this, let's say control the battery management system, that control the body, that control transmission, and any other functionalities as designated. So our product is fully manufactured in Uganda from the start to the very end. And it is the only system in the world, when we couple this hardware to the software, that can perform remote monitoring and control while actuating pay-go and enabling customer relations management of solar systems and solar powered equipment.
Councillor Doris and Councillor Kenneth, welcome to this segment where we are going to be discussing aspects of technology, intellectual property, as well as measures which could be tax measures or non-tax measures that are critical to realizing a vibrant, competitive, and scalable mobility industrial value chain in Uganda, serving the domestic and regional market with competitive products and services. Over to you, Councillor Doris. Could you tell us more about where we are in terms of policy, tax policy, non-tax policy, which is critical to enabling the business environment around mobility as a prioritized industrial value chain in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Paul. Very good morning to you all. My name is Doris Akol. I'm a tax and public sector practice partner at Chagaba Otatina, the Denton's office in Uganda. Previous to this role, many of you may recall that I was the Chief Fundraiser for Government, otherwise known as the Commissioner General for Uganda Revenue Authority. So I'm currently doing tax advisory as well as public sector corporate governance advisory. And it's in this role that I support Kira Motors Corporation in developing the mobility industry, especially the mission vehicles in Uganda. You know, it's now the growth of the green economy, and Kira Motors is one of the front runners in the growing economy in Uganda. So we are humbled and honored to be advising Kira Motors Corporation in the growth of that economy and their contribution to the mobility value chain in Uganda. From the perspective of tax policy and non-tax policy measures, I'll start with the tax policy measures. It's imperative now, as this is a new sector, not only in Uganda but in the region. I believe that we are fast movers in the region for us to be having an automotive industry sector as well as green mobility value chain. So it's imperative for us to start exploring fiscal measures that can enhance the growth of this sector. When I talk about fiscal measures, Paul, I talk about what kind of incentives can there be in the tax policy regime to allow the sector to grow. What kind of, call it exemptions or incentives, tax incentives to the inputs that go into making the vehicles, to what kind of exemption regimes can be given to the products that come out of our products when we roll them out, like this Kayoola EVS. What kind of registration requirements can be not removed but perhaps relaxed, because we are trying to grow. This is a new sector. If I analogize it with other sectors that we have seen coming off the ground, oil and gas, plus other sectors, there are certain incentives that government has produced. So I think it's imperative for us to put our thinking caps on and see what policy, direct, deliberate policy incentives can be made for this particular value chain to go off the ground. When it comes to issues to do with the production facility, we have secured land, and there is a lot of development going on in the production facility at Jinja, in Nakasongola, and very soon in Kayunga. What characterization do we have of these production facilities? Shouldn't we be deliberate in characterizing them as EPZ zones, free zones, you know, because the regime around export processing zones, the regime around free zones is already incentivized. So I think it would be important for our production facilities, wherever they are, to be characterized in the regime for free zones or export processing zones, so that they can take advantage of the incentives that are already in the policy and legal regime. The third would be for purposes of maybe the inputs that we get. Because it's a new sector, because it's green mobility, because it's mission vehicles, our traditional tariff classification for customs, for inputs, has not envisaged this segment coming into the country.
Yeah.
So you may find that we'll have challenges with classifying these inputs for customs clearance. So I think it would also be good if the classification and tariff classification regime applicable to this sector would also be looked at in order for that, for any impediments that may come out of that classification to be removed. Africa continental free trade area issues. We are not only making vehicles for the Ugandan market. Actually, I think the bigger picture, because we are fast movers, the bigger picture would be making vehicles for the region. Now, with the AFCFTA regime coming in online, how are we engaging? And here we do engage, first of all, as a country, but also within the region. How do we engage to ensure that our company, our corporation, our homegrown products, they enjoy premium status under AFCFTA? You know, how do we open the doors for them? How do we ensure that we get the preferential treatment that AFCFTA and other free trade area regimes provide for our products? I think those are some of the policy issues that I would like to talk about. From a non-tax policy perspective, I would look at, we've made the Kayoola EVS. How is it registered? How is it registered in Uganda? Because registration regimes for motor vehicles in Uganda is characterized by requirements of engine number, chassis number, engine CC, and things like those. Fuel types and things like those. When you look at a typical registration book, it's going to look at the CC, what do you call it, engineers? It's really about the
engine. It's about
the engine capacity and the fuel types, the engine numbers, because those are the nomenclatures that have been given to motor vehicles. But for this kind of vehicles that we are making, I mean, it's a disruption. It's a typical disruption, innovation and disruption of what has been known to happen. So we need to have changes in the legal regime that that registers vehicles like these ones to include vehicles that do not have engine capacity, that do not have engine numbers, that do not have fuel types. So I think that is another non-tax but policy measure.
We would like to see how we also hear a little bit about, because some of the aspects that you're bringing on board also point to the technology itself.
Absolutely.
They point to how are we working around recognizing the effort, the innovation effort, the science effort that delivers this technology.
Absolutely.
So at this point, Doris, I would like to turn to Councillor Kenneth and get to hear a little bit more from that perspective. Technology, recognizing the effort of innovation through intellectual property rights, and how this applies to mobility, and how this all gels together to ensure that we achieve what we see we want to achieve. Councillor Kenneth, over to you.
Well, thank you. Doris, I always enjoy listening to you speak. I think you've spoken at one of our symposiums before, so it's always a pleasure, and it's in particular, it's a pleasure sharing a panel with you. My name is Kenneth Muhanji. I'm the managing partner at KT Advocates. I am a lecturer of ICT law and intellectual property law. I also consult for the World Bank, and I'm an external advisor to the Ministry of ICT, and I also represent Uganda at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution at the World Economic Forum. So the question you've asked, Paul, is very pertinent, because I'll start with addressing the elephant in the room. I was looking at the Global Innovation Index, and Uganda had ranked 119 out of, I think, 132, 135. And that was for 2021. And that was a drop, because in 2019, I think we were about 114, and then 2018 we had also dropped. So the 2021 figures or numbers actually a drop from what we have currently. Now, that of course can be attributed to so many factors, one of them being COVID and all the disruptions that happened during that time. But I'd like to think, especially since we are moving with such initiatives, if we are to increase that number, if we are to be counted among the countries that are leading in innovation, especially in the electric vehicle manufacturing space, or generally in the manufacturing space anywhere in the world, there must be policy-related considerations that put the innovator at the forefront. One of those I'd like to think, of course, is reducing the cost of IP. We've had many innovators complain about the cost of registering a patent, a utility model, copyright, whatever it is that you're looking at within the innovation ecosystem or within the intellectual property value chain. And so I strongly feel, Councillor Doris already alluded to it, creating some sort of free zone. So even with IP, why don't we have something of the sort where you have exemptions, especially for innovators? And perhaps that will allow more people to reap the benefits of registration of their intellectual property. And we need to go back as well to understand that as a world, as a continent, we saw that working together is important. That's why in IP we've had very many conventions. Many of you have had, let's say, of the Paris Convention, Bern Convention. All these are conventions, and Uganda actually hosted a Kampala Convention on voluntary registration of copyright, which is something that I'm very proud of. But beyond that, all these conventions, the one point they keep pushing is the importance of innovation and the importance of ensuring that you support innovators to be able to create to remove their ideas from their mind and express them in a manner that will actually move development forward. So with that in mind, one, if you're able to reduce the cost, and then number two, as well, look at the law that regulates these applications. For example, if you're looking at a patent, if someone was creating a battery, let's say, or any other device that would be able to work with this bus, ultimately they'd have to go through a series of tests in order for that patent to be approved. One is novelty, that it has to be new, then of course inventive step and industrial applicability. We can discuss that in detail, or depending on whether there are any questions. But beyond that, I'd like to think that since we're in nascent stages, I think our patent applications are just in the tens. And this is something that we need to be able to increase. So on top of reducing the cost, I'd also like to think that perhaps since we are the custodians of our laws, sometimes we take these laws the way that we receive them without giving them the context that they apply or that would apply to Ugandans. So I'd like to think that for many of those tests, perhaps we can loosen the requirements a little bit and be able to increase these patent applications. And of course, I'm certain of, because we're still categorized as a low developing country, we still have certain benefits that would accrue with that particular status, and such an initiative could be discussed at the council meetings where we discuss intellectual property policy all over the world. And then perhaps I will end with, on top of the policy and getting these innovators to be able to create, we also go back to the foundation. How are we educating them? I've been attending training hosted by the World Trade Organization and the World Intellectual Property Organization for teachers of IP. And there's a professor from Palestine who was talking about that in Palestine now, education is something that has been put at the forefront, that you find that you have a high turnover and yet low quality education. So I think in Uganda that may also be the case, in the sense that we need to put more emphasis on the sciences, but even on the arts, to be able to have lawyers, for example, that are specialized in things like intellectual property, in things like technology. I think if we do so and we work together, all those things perhaps will be able to increase our patent application, increase our innovators, and the cascading effect really will go into our economy, will go into our social life and our general well-being.
Oh, that is awesome. I will return to you, Councillor Doris, for just one last point. That one point that you had to make about non-tax measures. Yes. I think there was something burning that you wanted to point out.
Yeah.
Just one.
Yes, I had wanted to talk about the areas relating to research and development.
Perfect.
Because this is an industry segment that is heavy on research and development, is heavy on innovation. So we would need to, within the whole policy environment or public policy environment around encouraging research and development, Councillor Kenneth has talked about zones, innovation zones. What kind of both from an education perspective, but also from a scientific regulation perspective. How do we encourage research and development zones? What kind of skilling requirements, even in our higher education institutions, what kind of decisions must we make in the type of education, in the type of formation, in the type of matriculation, in order for us to be heavy on research and development? I think that was the other non-tax policy measure that I wanted to
Thank
talk
you,
about.
Councillor Doris and Councillor Kenneth. This segment of this talk show is brought to you by the Secretariat of Science, Technology and Innovation in the Office of the President, in partnership with Private Sector Foundation, as well as Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. Our viewers will be back shortly. Once again, a very good morning, Ugandans, our listeners, to this wonderful mobility industrial value chain talk show, where we are discussing everything mobility. How do we realize a vibrant, competitive and scalable mobility industrial value chain in Uganda? In our previous segment, we heard about what is being made here, the electric motorbikes, the electronics, and of course, we are aboard the premium electric zero emissions bus made in Uganda, the Kayoola EVS. And in this segment, we are going to be hearing about how are we taking the science that helps us understand that the interventions are feasible. And if they are feasible, how is the commercial sector, in terms of financial institutions, preparing innovative products to support the physical, or rather to support the feasible interventions along the make, develop, sell, and use of sustainable mobility devices and solutions. On the panel right now, we have David Wachiku, he needs no introduction, and also Martin Roy Rukwago. These amazing discussants who are going to help us understand what is feasible and how is it feasible in order for us to deepen value addition along the mobility industrial value chain. Now, the banking sector is getting itself positioned to support the viable interventions in terms of value addition within the mobility industrial value chain. David, tell us about the viability of manufacturing vehicle parts and systems in Uganda for the regional market.
Thanks, Paul, for the opportunity to be here. David Nanambachuk is my name. I trained as an electrical engineer at Kayoola University, and then I took the programming and mathematical aspects and went into mathematical finance in South Africa and then in the UK at Cambridge. Then worked on Wall Street at Credit Suisse Investment Bank, and then worked in a hedge fund where we were doing the artificial intelligence, machine learning for quantitative trading. After a stint in London, I joined private equity in Nairobi, Uganda, and then founded a Sigma, which is a leading advisory and management firm. We have built a practice around end-to-end, from the research on opportunities, fundraising for opportunities, and then supporting on the managing of these opportunities being set up. Quickly going to the point at hand, we've been working with Killer Motors to understand, how this value chain can be developed. Most importantly, how you can localize the supply chain, because you see a car has more than 30,000 parts. And so the issue is, what can be made in Uganda. I'm speaking from both a technologist and an investment mind. And when you work in investment, you are paid to doubt and find the pathway for exceeding this doubt. So when you get into this thing, obviously there's any Ugandan who's watching, you would imagine, are these things really possible in our country? Unfortunately for us, most money is around real estate and traders. We're a nation of real estate moguls and traders. We don't have a history of making things. Okay? So getting into this exercise where we have been working with Kayoola Motors for the last 6 months now was to really appreciate, how things come together and how Kayoola Motors could set up. It is very important to appreciate the fact that you cannot make a car without localizing the supply chain. What does that really mean, supply chain localization? Supply chain localization means that you need to start tapping into your existing strengths as a nation, minerals, skills, the industrial base and partnerships, to make some of the components that feed into the car. And that's what that means. So, and then quickly then someone says, oh, we are talking about cars, and there's been a big debate, car manufacturing. But then most of the viewers, once in a while you have no brake pads, and then you go to the mechanic and they remove a brake pad, and you see that's a simple rubber thing there. You get the air filter, you see simple plastic component, You get a car seat like this, and you see the plastic, metal, and and all these different components. So ours was to think about and say, okay, buses are going to be made, and you saw the president gave a directive, rightly so, that there should not be any more importation of buses, and that means that there's a chance now to start assembling some of these things, and to invite Ugandans to participate in these opportunities. So our role was simple. What are those parts that can quickly be manufactured in country, given the existing capacity? But that's the short term. But then eventually in the medium term and in the long term. And we identified some parts, which can be localized, which means manufactured in Uganda or quickly assembled, to feed Kayoola Motors. But most importantly, we identified those opportunities where if someone is setting up in Uganda for Kayoola Motors, they are also manufacturing for the wider market, for the Toyota, for the Hondas, for all these different cars, And some of those parts include your filters, your brake pads, your shock absorbers, the quick parts, your fasteners and bolts. But most importantly as well, we knew that no nation in the world has ever led without taking a big bet on itself. So now we're in an electric bus, Kayoola EVS. For some of you who have been watching in the news, you know that the world is moving towards what we call the green energy. Right now, as we speak, you have the COP26, where world leaders are coming together and saying, they're making all kinds of commitments to the end of deforestation, commitment to all these kinds of carbon taxing. So the world is moving. And you can see some of the leading car companies, the Teslas and all these, the valuations in the markets. We are coming to the world of the EVs. And so Kayoola Motors is also taking this big shot to make things like car batteries, to see how Uganda's mineral base, because we have all minerals being cobalt, the lithium, the nickels coming together. So ours is the pathway to localization, and we have identified those opportunities where Ugandans can come and set up in partnership with Kayoola Motors, viable opportunities, from glass. You have this glass here, it's used on the house, it's used on your cars, it's used on buildings, and the bamboo floor which taps into our trees. Yeah. So, I can see now you can relate when we say that we are making a car, it's not only Kayoola Motors. And we have also established partners from painting companies, Uganda, Cable Corporation, all these kinds of, Uganda Batteries Limited. So the opportunity we are seeing is that by making these components, it's not only Kayoola Motors that is benefiting, it is Ugandans on the whole supplying and benefit. So when you speak Kayoola Motors, the public's mindset should shift from these guys making buses, it should shift to everyone in the supply chain when you're making these car components. And that means employment for our brothers, you know, for sons and daughters. It means, you know, even jobs. When you're making a bus, you have a carpenter working on the bamboo floor, you have painters, you have, you know, carpenters, you have all these very, very interesting things. So the opportunities are immense at a commercial standpoint, at a feasible standpoint, and even for those components where feasibility is not yet ready, we must really invest, you know, and that investment means that, you know, there are all ripple effects to other sectors of the economy.
Thank you so much.
I hope that can tease and excite, you know, people who are, and we hope now the Ugandans, what COVID taught us is that, you know, manufacturing is the way to go. Absolutely. Away from your real estate and the trading things. And there are very many opportunities for the private sector to come and partake in there. And, you know, the good thing here, you can start by, like an air filter, you can start by assembling. And there you capture a lot of the value, 35% of the value. And you are supplying to Kia Motors and supplying to all the other Toyotas, cars, yes. Well. And then further down the line, you can now start manufacturing some of those components. So there's a proper pathway to feasibility beyond just the normal, you know, talk of, we're not just jumping into things, but it's a steady conservative path where there's opportunities for Ugandans, employment, investments, you know, and wider impact, you know, regionally and on the economy.
Thank you, David, for highlighting that the mobility industrial value chain as a prioritized value chain for economic transformation in Uganda is being infused by the right measure of science to explore the viable pathways which will create real value. And I would like to turn over to Martin Roy. Sure. Tell us, as we are unveiling, as we are paving that pathway, that viable pathway, how is the banking sector positioning itself to fuel with the right innovative financing products?
Thank you very much, Engineer Paul. It's a pleasure being here, and it's a pleasure being on the panel with my colleague David. I must mention, Martin Roy Lukwago is my name, once again. I was first an engineer, and I'm still an engineer.
Once an engineer, always an engineer.
Can't close it out, you know.
Yeah.
But then I decided to move a bit aside and represent engineers in the field of finance. So I went to pursue a master's program in mathematical finance. So I'm impressed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He's the first. My colleague is the first Ugandan that I have met that has done mathematical finance at a higher level. So I really appreciate this. So I've done quite a number of activities. I've practiced a bit of engineering and then went into finance, and I've done practice finance majorly in the global markets space, trading currencies and interest rates and all that. And now I'm trying to do a lot of coverage, supporting the public sector, which many commonly look at as government business. So that's what I look after in Absa Bank, and I also look after financial institutions that we relate with globally, as well as the non-bank financial institutions. Coming back to the topic, so what David was speaking to is typically a value chain, a series of value chains. And a financial institution is endowed to be in such a place where it connects the dots of those that have and those that have. Now you'll ask yourself, why do you connect dots of those that have and those that have? Someone would automatically look at it as those that have and those that don't have. But you can never claim that anyone out there doesn't have anything. He has something. Yeah. So the only variable here is, what does the one dot have and what does the other dot have? And what we're speaking to here is the value chain. Now, what we try to position ourselves as Absa Bank is, how do we present ourselves in such a way that we can make one dot become resourceful beyond its own understanding in comparison to another, and what do we do with the other? So what do we do in getting this value chain, that is the line connecting these two dots, so that it becomes active. It's all about ensuring that one dot creates an appreciation for the other, and in so doing, you create an avenue where demand and supply can complement one another. So what are we trying to say here? So ideally, as a financial institution, we have, and I'm not going to talk about the products that we do have, I'm only going to focus on the model that we do have to present to public. In other words, we've got researchers, we've got developers, we've got manufacturers, we've got suppliers. Some suppliers don't even know what their products are going to do, and the end users.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is to get all these dots together with a focal point of he who converts the supplier's products into an end product that can be consumed by the end users. So what we are trying to do here is we create an appreciation by the manufacturer. Take an example, Kira Motors. So they're going to have all these suppliers. Look at this bus. You've got the steel, you've got the glass, and many of these products we do have. You've got the bamboo. Thank you for the examples that you presented. And let's not forget, we do all this. We present ourselves as ABSA to support the private sector and the public sector. I'll speak about the private sector. The private sector includes, yes, the creation of jobs, creation of appreciation of the need for the raw materials. Then the manufacturers, of course, those are all part of the private sector. But let's not forget, the public sector involves the government, which can actually collect the taxes, government which can create the policies and the framework within which all these operators undertake their activities. Then also, let's not forget that government can also present itself as a business entity. It is interested in doing business. So where do we stand here? All these dots that I've talked about in the value chain, they need one area. One area involves they should present themselves as a business. Let's not forget that. And if you're to do any investment in production, you need the four factors of production. You need the land, you need the capital, you need the entrepreneurship, and the labor.
And the labor, yeah.
Now, all these other three, the land, the labor you can provide, the land you can provide, the capital you can get. Because anyone can walk into a bank and you get. But what you also need is entrepreneurship skills. Now that entrepreneurial skills is another angle that we look at as ABSA.
Yeah.
In ABSA, we've got the ABSA Academy. And that ABSA Academy simply speaks to identification of a need in society. That need in society, we don't have to do that role. We only need to understand that the value chain players have actually identified the need. So if you want to manufacture a product, you definitely know that there's a need for that product. So that's a dot that we've identified. As you do all that, the supplier realizes that you need to supply with the raw materials. That's another dot. And then all we do is we acknowledge the fact that there's a dot, there are two dots in between, and all we do is come over, have a discussion, unpack the need at hand, unpack the entrepreneurial skills that are required by the two dots, and then we go back through the ABSA Academy, mobilize the skill providers, we bring them together on behalf. Our interest is to ensure that we upskill the two value chain players. So we bring skill partners, and that can work in the wealth of taxation, it can work in the wealth of financing, accounting, and all that. Procurement. So all those are skills that we bring to the value chain players. In the process, we upskill all these value chain stakeholders just to make sure that they themselves produce the best that they have at hand. In so doing, again, the one who uptakes the resources, the products from them, that you're looking at the manufacturer all the way up to the end user, will appreciate the quality of the product that is available. In all that wealth of services that we provide, we then come along and then provide the financing. So we provide the financing to an entity that has actually appreciated the need to do business. So if you look at it as an entire value chain, we address the needs of the supplier all the way up to the consumer.
Awesome.
With the focus of the manufacturer at the center. So he's the center point, and then let's not forget again, normally you realize that everybody walks to the bank and they are asked for collateral. So we do not want to do that. All we are trying to say here is let's focus on the manufacturer. The manufacturer is the center point for the bank. And we know that since we know we have the flow of the funds from the manufacturer all the way to the suppliers, all the way to the end user, or from the end user to the supplier, we have some bit of confidence we can provide the financing to the respective stakeholders without them necessarily providing collateral. And in that way, we make the whole value chain become feasible.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Thank you very much,
I think
Engineer.
it's an amazing, amazing discussion. And what we see is that as government is working together with the private sector and the development partners, the friend of Uganda, the friend of humanity, to develop the mobility industrial value chain.
Yeah.
We believe that everyone has something. And good morning once again, listeners and viewers of this amazing, amazing mobility industrial value chain talk show, the pioneering of its kind. We are aboard the premium zero emission Kayoola EVS, and my panelists remember that we have Wi-Fi on board courtesy of Airtel Uganda. Log in and keep connected as we discuss everything mobility. In this particular segment of the panel, which is brought to you by the Secretariat of Science, Technology and Innovation, Office of the President, with the leadership of Dr. Monica Musenero, the Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, in partnership with Private Sector Foundation and Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. We are going to discuss mass transit systems and digital mobility solutions. And to share with us what is happening in that space, we have Mr. Senoga Fred, who needs no introduction on everything bus in terms of operation and maintenance. And on the other hand, we have Mr. Michael Sereko from Sintel. Over to you, Mr. Senoga. Kakati ebya bus, tubadde twagala otutolere akagga n'akawanvu ku bintu ebikwatagana ku ntambuza za bus mu ggwanga. Mr.
Thank you, Paul. Nga bw'agambye amanya gange Fred Senoga. I'm a urban public transport specialist. Naye on this topic, I think kangezeeko okumixinga so that our wide audience nabo bakola ki batukwata bulungi. Naye nga tonnagenda ku MTBS, mass bus transport or stage bus, ndoza kansooka okunyolako current status bweri mu ddakiika ng'emu. Lwaki twetaaga okugenda mu buses? Currently, situation eri bweti. For the last 20-35 years, we lost a very good opportunity of organizing industry affair. Our local leaders, I think they made some strategic mistake. Nti bus ziri bwe zaavaawo, they went out a plan, transport ogitwalanga omulimu gw'okufuna ssente for domestic revenue for local authority. Ne babanga ng'example nga bwe mumanyi nga kuva Mukono oyina kusasula, n'ojja Kireka Wakiso osasula, Kampala osasule. So buli gwe baawa tender system yayonoona omulimu kubanga modo yali kunsondera ssente, ne batamanya nti public transport is a service. Oyina okumanya baasi ziri mmeka oba taxi mmeka ezibadde zikola ku luutu eno neetaagako mmeka kika kya mmotoka ki ekyo ne kireeta obuzibu obw'amaanyi ennyo nti mu emyaka egyo egyasooka omulimu gwali yongera mu kibuga yongera oba oleese kikadde oba oleese kipya oba kikanike oba si kikanike eyo ye biggest problem gye twafuna so by that ne business nejja nga tekyalina even supply and demand kyensonga lwaki olaba nti tulina jaamu tulina obumotoka butono emmotoka za myaka 25 nga teri akicontrollinga that was kyekizibu ekyasooka then ekirala ekyajja nti olw'okuba focus yali ku kusolooza nga si service ne ruutu ne zirema simple things kino kyekibuga kyokka nti bw'olinnya entambula kati ey'olukale n'olinyira Lubaga road tewali weekuleeta Kampala road simple like that lwakuba omuntu anoonya zijja then ne infrastructure mwenna mukimanyi tukuze bantu bazadde abaana nga tulina paaka 2 kati nazo ne zijjula kati ne tuggulawo n'endala ne baggulawo n'eziri private kujjuza ki so that toxic yaleeta obuzibu ate olwokuba tebagitunuulira nga service kyaleeta n'obuzibu nti tewaliwo na skilling ne training teriyo oba training labayingira mu mulimu gwaki gwa public transport naye nga public transport kati nga bwekuze is a science weetaaga investment ey'amaanyi amabanka tegayinza na kuyamba na industry eno kubanga weetaaga nga kiri organized n'ofuna long term funding osobole okufuna emmotoka ezitambuza abantu abangi so those core strategic mistakes I think zezatuleeta we tuli kaakati naye nga solution eyo givaamu mumanyi tetulina ssente zimala gaziya nguudo nga kitwetaaga okukola kuleeta baasi esobole mu kifo ky'okutwala abantu abatono ng'etwala abantu abangi awo bwe tukola ki ye mulimu ogusinga ennyo lwaki twetaaga baasi wano with that wano ojja kusobola abantu batwala layisi abantu babe nga basavinga ssente ate not only that ne ruutu zennyini zibe nga zikola ki nga system etambula olw'okuba gwe main gundi yo eri service naye olw'okuba service weebeera nga eri organized ojja kwesanga nti byonna ebintu bigonda then ekira ne infrastructure bw'oleeta no organized public transport with buses ojja kumanya kika kye ekya bus kyoleese maintenance mweri abakozi bali trained n'omusaabaze akole ki afunimu n'ebisale bisobola okukola ki okendeera bulungi nnyo then mujjamu ne infrastructure ojja kwesanga kati nga mwenna tukimanyi ovuga emmotoka neeva ebusiya eyiganga zonna nejja mu kibuga naye nga ezekuno na Ssennoga nemala essaawa 8 epaakinze awo ate eyagala kuzzaayo sebaggalawa iganga kati ebyo ebireeta omutawaana omugotteko naye bwe tuba with organized mass bus transport system abala bagamba stage bus kubanga stage bus kyekola eyimirira ku stage sinvaamu awo naye kati engeri transport gye tulina ojja feel and go ojja nemala kujjula kyola nezibeerawo nezirinda ssaawa 6-7 nejjula eryoka egende naye no eya stop and pick and go eyamba emmotoka nezitwala abantu bangi ate nga kibatwalidde ku muwendo mulungi n'ekirala ng'owadde okulyetinza emirimu mingi nnyo bw'oleeta sisitimu eno mu transport ogenda kwongeramu mirimu Uganda yonna ekyalaakinga transport mwenna mukimanyi Masaka abantu batambulira mu limited Fort Portal tukasese abantu bakyatambulira ku pick up Aluwe eyo abantu bakyatambulira ku fuso kati bw'oleeta zino baasi zino tuziteekamu ne zitambuza abantu abangi mu Greater Kampala taxi ezimu ojja kwesanga zikole mu feeder roads ne baasi tezijja n'abakozi abalala babaskirinze bazze mu baasi eno infrastructure gye tutadde ku ng'oyingira Greater Kampala taxi ziba zigenda kukola ki kukomaawo ate zironda abantu zikole ki ziddeyo ne bodaboda nazo zibe mu feeder road last mile paka ku stage awo byebintu ebimu ku lw'okuba obudakika tebuli obuje byebiringanga ebikulu ebyetoololedde mukama wange Paul ku public transport gye tulina nekirwaki twetaaga okugenda mu mmotoka ennene
tweyanziza nnyo mukulu Ssennoga okubanga otutegeezezza ensonga era n'ozikatiza ezitutwala okubanga twongera okulongoosa ku bintu ebyentambula okusengera ddala mu kibuga naye nga nze ndowooza ate bwe tulongoosa mu kibuga ate tulongoosa n'okuva ekibuga bwe kikoma okutuuka ku kibuga ekirala era ekirowoozo ekikulu tetulina okuba nga tutambula nakyo nti baasi ejja kuba yalina space yayo weoperatinga ne taxi ne boda boda ne special hire ffene nga tukwataganira wamu mu ngeri ennambulukufu okusobola okuba nga twongera okugonjoola ensonga zino n'okukwendeza omugotteko ogututwalako ebintu ebirungi bingi nnyo kubanga right now we know that in Kampala we lose over 24,000 man hours daily, equivalent to 3 trillion Uganda shillings annually due to traffic and road congestion. Time to act is now. Naye kakati tunaalaba tutyanga enteekateeka zino ate nga zongera okuba nnambulukufu through integrating technology to support integrated transport solutions. Kakati awo we njagala okwaniriza mukulu Nsereko to tell us more about what the digital mobility solutions can do in ensuring that the operations are done very well and there are minimal losses. Mr. Nsereko, please.
Thank you very much, Paul. Good day to everybody. My name is Michael Nsereko, and we would like to discuss the digital mobility solutions that we envisage shall play a very key role in increasing the efficiency of our transport sector. What are these digital mobility solutions? Imagine that Kira Motors has supplied all these buses, but we have Tondeka Metro Company that is taking on these buses. How will Tondeka be able to manage its fleet? How will it be able to schedule the trips? How will it be able to track the performance of its staff, of the driver? How will it be able to track the performance of the assets, the buses, in terms of electricity, in terms of fuel that it's consuming? How will it be able to track its human resource, its financing, through the use of enterprise resource planning systems? Those are the financial systems, the HR systems. Then you look at the fleet management systems. We need to track the vehicle. Where is it? Is it moving at the appropriate speed, which will of course affect the efficiency of the fleet. Then we also have connectivity for the customer. One, the Kayoola bus that we are on right now has free Wi-Fi. That connectivity forms part of the information that will be picked from the bus in real time and then be displayed to the required management systems experts, who will be able to analyze this information and derive some very valuable decisions outside of this information that's been obtained. Lastly, when it comes to payments, the end user will have to be able to pay for their services beforehand. We are looking at having payments using a mobile phone. We have done integrations with the banks. We've done integrations with the mobile money operators to be able to provide efficient payment systems to the customers and also enable them to know when will their next bus arrive. Like Mr. Fred had mentioned, we need to have a timely pick and drop model. Now, if it's a timely pick and drop model, you, the user, will have to find out when is my next bus arriving. So in the use of mobile digital solutions, it's about harnessing all the different types of technology to be able to, one, benefit you, the passenger, and two, benefit the management of the fleet of the buses, so that they will be able to manage their fleet appropriately.
And certainly this integration of technology offers opportunities not only for effectiveness, but the passenger experience is at the heart of this form of integration, especially right now as we struggle with the pandemic, which has taught us so many things. Having contactless fintech integration,
Yes.
and not moving around with cash,
Yes.
can also deliver dividends along the health value chain,
Definitely.
reducing the burden on the healthcare system, which would be resultant from infections being traded on such shared spaces as people move, but also enabling the owners of the fleet to have a better system of transparency and being able to know how they are performing. And the technology we have here for the Kayoola EVS that supports this kind of mobility systems, we have a cashless payment system, and of course the integration of Wi-Fi is a very important aspect of what we are seeing here, because with connectivity we can also support the bus technically when it is on the road. Mr. Senoga, one very important thing we need to highlight here, training the current stock of people in the transport system so that we enable them to participate when the buses are on the road. Because we are not losing jobs, we are creating more opportunities. In 1 minute, can you tell us, can highlight, you told me earlier that one electric bus being put on the road, 9 jobs in operations. What do you exactly mean? Tell us.
Yeah, basically with, as you said, one bus creates not less than 9. When you are very efficient, it's 9, but sometimes even more. Otandikira ku driver yennyini olina omujja omusikinga omujja wabadde permit gyalina ya 14 seater okuba mu upgrading avuga ebbaasi ennene. Olina ba stewards boyita ba conductor, olina ba inspector, olina shift ekyuka kuba bavuga bbaasi. Tukwagala ovuga essaawa 8 omulala agikole ki? Agivuge. So shift ziba 2, ogatteko abooza, abakanika, abacharginga, abanakola aba mobile ticketing system, okebera nti bina bikoze bulungi. So weesanga egyo gy'emirimu minimum directly ku bus. Leka mu office nga tobakoze eki nga tobataddeeko. Ate abazikola mirimu gyo ate minene. Nze njogera ffe abagivuga buli lunaku. Egyo emirimu direct gy'okola ki gy'ogattako. Ate nga bwe mbadde nnyonnyola nti bus zino bwe zijja, Uganda yonna tulina relax stock y'emmotoka. Nga bwe nagambye Masaka bakyatambulira mu limited abantu 10. Fort Portal mu pickups. So emmotoka ezimu ziba zijja still okukola muki mu Uganda wano. Abalala balole, abalala badde mu zi feeder roads yeki kyembadde nnyonnyolako okusikiringa.
Tweyanziza nnyo kakati Munnayuganda munaffe awuliriza, weeteeseteese otya mu ngeri ey'okuyigirizibwa osobole okuganyirwa mu nteekateeka eno eteekebwawo okuba nga twongera okakasa ebintu ebikolebwa mu Uganda okutumbula ebyentambula kyetuyise mobility industry of value chain. Webale nnyo mukulu Senoga, webale nnyo mukulu Nsereko.
I'm Engineer Edwin Agawa, the head of the Electric Mobility Research Program at the International University of East Africa. The electric motorcycle is designed by us, and some of the component parts are produced locally here in our mechanical workshop. Runs on a battery technology, a lithium-ion battery technology, which can be charged in under 2 hours using our normal AC alternating current. And our battery can run between 80 to 120 kilometers, depending. If you are carrying a heavy road and high speed, you can do up to 80. But if you're not carrying a heavy road and high speed, you can do up to 120 kilometers. We've tested its capabilities on all the tail lines, both the hilly tail line, the flat, and it's performing so well. We have also tested the road. Its carrying capacity load is 210 kilograms. That's the carrying capacity on the tail line. So that is the high performance by any standard motorcycle on the market. But more important, other additional features this bike has, which ordinary bikes don't have. This bike can be remote controlled. We can switch it off from anywhere. We run a software system here where at any time we can see where the bikes are and we can switch them off. The future of electric technology is here at a global level. As you are aware of what's going on in Glasgow, Scotland about the fate of climate change. With electric technology, we can advance green mobility, 100% green mobility. And with our project here, we can guarantee and we intend to provide a reliable, very efficient, fully electric motorcycle, which can provide a full range up to 150 kilometers in a single charge.
This segment of the National Mobility Panel discussion as part of the commemoration of the National Science Week, organized by the Office of the President, Secretariat responsible for Science, Technology and Innovation. This morning we have Mr. Emmanuel Fred Mugunga, who's going to be telling us more about the energy available to support mobility and why that is important, but also going to tell us about the initiatives that government is working on to support the shift and promote the shift to electric mobility through establishing the electric vehicle charging ecosystem. We also have Mr. Rick Rapper Thompson, who will be talking to us about mobility as a service, the case of SEPBORDER. Emmanuel, tell us what government is doing.
Thank you very much, Paul. Once again, I'm glad to be here to be speaking about this very important subject. But I'll introduce myself. My name is Mugunga Emmanuel Freddy. Currently, I'm the Under Secretary and Accounting Officer at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. I am also the chairperson of the National Automotive Industry Development Policy Task Force, a task force that is drawn from various ministries and spearheaded the formulation of the policy which is supposed to guide the automotive industry in Uganda. Talking about the e-mobility initiatives, you will all recall that Uganda, like any other country, is affected by pollution. Kampala as a city in itself is number one in Eastern Central Africa in as far as pollution is concerned, and it comes second in Africa. Now that is not a very nice position to have, but what is the issue here is that there is a lot of carbon emissions emanating from our combustion system vehicles, direct combustion system vehicles. So it's quite important that e-mobility comes on board and we have some kind of green transportation systems in the country. This will go a long way to address the pertinent issues of climate change. You are all aware that COP26 taking place in Glasgow starting today is addressing these issues of reducing the carbon emissions. So as far as we're concerned, when we come up with such initiatives, we shall be addressing the core. You will all know, or you might want to know, that 96% of the cargo in the country is transported by road. And these are, again, vehicles using with direct combustion engines. 95% of the passengers, again, are moving around by road. So when we address this issue of e-mobility, we are tackling the real issue of contributing towards mitigating the effects of carbon emissions and their effect on climate change. Thank you, Paul.
Now, we would like you to tell us more about the availability of energy. Are we generating enough energy to support transportation, to support the move towards green mobility?
Thank you very much. Certainly, we are generating, as we stand now, we are generating enough energy. And you will all recall that we are not using all the energy that we are generating right now. On a typical day, we are working with about 700 megawatts. And when I say about, it could be a little, maybe between 700 and 750. And yet the capacity now with the coming on board of Isimba hydropower plant and Karuma, which will soon also be coming on board, we shall be well above 1,200 megawatts. Now that means that the e-mobility is coming in as one of the consumers of this energy, and we shall also be improving. You know, the more we consume, the more the chances of the tariff going down, because you've got more people consuming the power. you also recall that there are many other power generators. We've got other systems which are being encouraged, the mini grids which are picking from solar. All those can be brought into the picture so that we can power this e-mobility. But to answer your question directly, yes, the energy sector is ready for e-mobility.
Support e-mobility.
Support e-mobility, yes, please.
Now tell us in terms of the charging ecosystem, because certainly just like we see the ICE vehicles, that is vehicles that use an internal combustion engine,
Yes.
they are supported by fueling stations.
Yes.
How are we working as government and perhaps engaging also other partners and the private sector to develop a sustainable and scalable electric vehicle charging ecosystem that will go a long way in promoting the shift to electric mobility?
Yes, thank you again, Paul, for that question, and it brings to bear what government efforts are in terms of supporting the e-mobility, and especially that very much critical and required infrastructure, which is the charging infrastructure or the charging ecosystem. You will realize that as a country, we've got so many fuel stations littered all over the country.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the e-mobility, we do not have that yet. I am aware that we've got in the country 2 premium charging systems, which under you as Kayoola Motors.
Yes.
But also there is a mobile one. Is it called mobile?
Yeah, it's a portable charger.
Yeah, the portable charger.
Level 3.
Level 3, yes.
But we also have some companies like Zembo and Borderwork,
yes,
which are also working on the 2 and 3 wheelers,
and
they are promoting the concept of battery swapping,
yes,
for the borders, and it seems to be also taking root.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that one, that is certainly another good approach, and I can let you know that we have had discussions with the same people at the ministry to see how we synergize. Now, when it comes to the charging infrastructure for these vehicles, especially the buses and other vehicles to come, we thought at the ministry that we should come up and provide some kind of pilot to try and show and establish this infrastructure. This we are doing through a project which is supposed to install or construct this charging infrastructure in the cities. One in Entebbe, Kampala, Jinja, and other cities as we come up. I only counted those, just try to say the cities that we have. But our project is focusing on creating this, because I will tell you that when I was growing up in Uganda, I never used to see jam. In Jinja, we never had any jam. Today on any typical day, go there and you'll see all the small cars causing the jam. So we can't plan for Kampala alone. We have to move out to to other cities.
The other 14 cities.
Yes. So the project is supposed to ensure that we provide some charging infrastructure to start with, which will then entice the private sector to come on board, and they also enter this space. As we talk now, we also plan within the same project that we should also have some vehicles, electric buses specifically, purchased, and given what the president directed, that certainly means that these buses have to come from Kayoola
Motors Corporation.
Yes, Kayoola Motors Corporation.
Yes.
So we are looking at that, and once we are through with the various protocols, we think that we shall be supporting this kind of infrastructure, and this should see us going a long way into this. But again, why are we interested in partnering with the private sector, but also as government? We think that there should be a special tariff for these charging infrastructures. It will not be possible to give somebody in their home, if they have a portable charger, to give them a special tariff, but the charging stations, the designated charging points, certainly conversation is already on to ensure that they get good tariffs. Just like you see, the president has directed that power should be directly from the substations to the industrial parks. Now that means that they get a good tariff. a similar thing should be in place for the charging infrastructure, so that those designated points can have a tariff that is encouraging, and people will see value in this. And you know that we think government is geared towards its contribution to e-mobility.
Thank you, Emmanuel. You've highlighted three very important points. One, the timeliness of addressing the negative impact of transport-based carbon emission, and hence showing our commitment to mitigating the impact of climate change through mainstreaming the shift to mobility. But he's also assured the nation that in terms of generation of power to support e-mobility, we are well, and ultimately you've also indicated that government is sowing the seed in establishing the critical electric vehicle charging infrastructure, which will form the foundation against which the private sector can build further and enterprise around that. Thank you very much for highlighting those matters. Amazing things are happening in this country, and right now I would like to introduce to you one of our very awesome innovators in the mobility space, the concept of mobility as a service, bringing the border to the next level of supporting mobility as a very important aspect of the multimodal transport solution that we need to move Africa to its destination. Ricky Rapper Thompson. What a beautiful name. What a beautiful day.
Thank you.
What a beautiful bus.
Thank you.
Please tell us about your work. Why, what, when, how are we changing the destiny of Africa with mobility as a service, the case study of Self-Border? Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting me. It's actually my first time to be on such a nice, luxurious, locally made bus. And I think I'm one of the proud Ugandans who have always been promoting Bubu.
Yeah.
I think we proudly also say it's about time that we stop importing a lot of things and actually start to make them and export them. And I think as a country we are putting ourselves in the best position to be able to do that. My name is Ricky Rapper Thompson, co-founder and director of Self-Border. Happy to have a chat with all of you as part of the preparation for the National Science Week, which we are part of as well. The work that we do makes us directly fall in.
Yeah.
Self-Border was started, the idea was born around June 2014, started operation officially around March, April 2015. And purposely the reason we came was the missing gap, the gap that was in the industry. There was lack of trust. People didn't know exactly who to ride with. There was a bad reputation for anyone there was a general bad reputation for the border riders. And at a certain point, you could find everyone having opinion about the borders, and people could say all sorts of bad things. But then also, to the contrary, the same people would say bad about the entire border industry, would have at least 5, 10 contacts in their phones that they would depend on. Now, also, just away from that, you find that sometimes the same people also have got relatives, neighbors and friends who are actually in the border industry. So we felt that as myself and my other co-founders, and me being that I was in the industry as a rider myself, faced with all these challenges, we decided that, you know what, we needed to make this industry better. Personally, of course, this idea woke up at a point when I lost a friend to a border accident. And I took it off as an advocate of road safety, but then ended up into being part of the team that was going to organize and transform the entire border industry with the help of technology. So historically, by the end of 2015, we had around 150 drivers. By the end of 2016, that's like around 5 years ago, we had around 1,300 drivers.
Wow.
By the end of 2017, we hit around 3,000. 2018 we hit around 8,000, and we've continued to grow. Today you're talking of a community of over 20,000. Been also luckily able to expand beyond East Africa. Yeah, thank you guys.
That's tremendous growth.
Thank you. This is directly part of the conversion that I was saying, that I think it's about time that we create things that could cross the border and just go beyond Kampala, Uganda, and cross beyond East Africa and also go to other parts of the world, because Uganda is known for being part of the Africa. And I think it's also just about time that we turn Uganda into the Pearl of Innovation. And I think everyone would be proud about that if we make that to happen. So yes, what we did with the border community was basically a transformation. And we realized even at the very beginning that there was a real big gap that was in the industry. The biggest problem that we still have even up to today is the fact that there is no filter for anyone to join the border industry. And I think long term, we really want to make sure that that can be standard, that can be standardized, so that anyone who wants to come to the border industry has got some kind of preparation before they come to serve the public. A border rider or the service of a border rider does not discriminate. You've seen the president, you've seen prime ministers, you've seen cabinet members of the cabinet members of the cabinet, you've seen members of parliament, you've seen business people, young students going to the university, legal people, lawyers, and these guys, everyone literally, journalists, everyone literally uses a border. So we want to do whatever it takes to make sure that the industry has got some level of standard. And that's why for us, when we came, we realized, and actually this was based on personal experience, because if you ask me, how did you join the border industry? After acquiring a motorbike, the next thing that happened is I started riding on the road, and then people stopped me. And then when someone stopped me, they told me, I'm going to this destination. I negotiate, they will agree, you put them and you go. You put them and you go, and before you realize it, you are already actually in the business of transporting people. And that is where the real gap is, because you come with no knowledge, because you don't get any formal training on how to ride. The driver of the Kayoola EVS has got some special training, some special preparation for him to be able to handle this kind of weight, this kind of crowd and stuff like that. And we think that even in the border industry, that has to happen. So that's why for us from the very beginning, we emphasize on training. We train them on road safety, first responder, because really there are a lot of accidents that continue to happen. And most times, whenever there's a scenario, a borderman is always there. Then we train them also in customer service. I mean, many people who have used the border had their own share of bad experience where, you know, a border man runs away with your change, or abuses you, or changes the price at the end of the trip and stuff like that. And we felt like that is something that could have been addressed. Then also, we did now the amazing thing of introducing technology. I usually say this strongly, and it's true, that when the time we came to the border industry, smartphone penetration was at 10%. We were talking about 2014, 2015. And it was difficult. Whenever we could recruit drivers, we needed to give each one of them a smartphone, and that meant that most of them even didn't know how to use the smartphone. So that's why we developed a special training. We call it Tech Wizard training, and that was a bit personal, because when I was going through school, I realized that people who knew computers, people who knew how to use computers, were called tech wizards. Today it might not work, but it was from that concept that at the very beginning, during school, when we were learning, we were told that people who knew very well how to use computers are called tech wizards. Then besides that, there are also other trainings, entrepreneurship, financial literacy. This is to prepare them to be better people. I think one of the things that we pride of today is that over the last couple of years, with the hard work that we have gone through, the hustle that we have gone through, people have been able to appreciate our work. I think your Safebody today has grown to become the #1 most used app locally. It's one of the best apps that everyone actually enjoys. I think besides the social media app, the next app that almost everyone apps, including Kenneth as well, will be a Safebody app.
Yeah. So you're mobilized for vaccination, COVID vaccination.
Yes, sir.
As we'll wrap up, could you briefly talk about that in 1 minute?
I mean, over the last couple of years, things from March 2020 when COVID-19 came, we joined and made sure that we were part of every single government effort and initiative that was aimed at helping with the fight against COVID-19. And from the very beginning, we've sensitized our drivers and made sure that they're aware, and they're ambassadors of this program, because literally a border guy carries on average around 15 persons every single day, and they were literally frontliners, just like the medical team or any other person, or these are people who are moving and meeting strangers every day. So we made sure that we partner with Ministry of Health to give them the basic training that they needed, so that they can prepare themselves and help government in the fight, not in spreading, in the fight against COVID-19. Now, when the vaccination drive came, because for us as people in the border industry, we're still in lockdown. And we're very uncomfortable about that. We no longer like it anymore. We felt we were being left behind because we also have a curfew of 6 p.m., which is unfortunate for us as well and for other people in the industry. And what we have decided to do, because we know that in the rest of the other parts of the world, in Western world, even in East Africa, people have used the power of vaccination. And I really think that vaccination is not just about government, it's about us who are in the businesses, people in the private sector, to mobilize our own people. So what we have done is really we have provided Safe Border Academy for the last couple of weeks, and we've been part of the UBL campaign where we're in Kololo. Right now, as I speak, we have the vaccination drive as well going on at Safe Border Academy. Yesterday, as I was mentioning earlier on, we vaccinated around 500 people.
Wow.
So literally, I think we've had close to over 5,000 people already vaccinated from the Safe Border Academy in the last 2-3 weeks.
Thank you. That is amazing work going on at Safe Border. I mean, it's quite impressive what is happening in this country, and I think today it's not talking about what is going to happen in the future, but it's already happening. What we would like to see is as many people as possible joining the mobility industrial value chain, because the opportunity in there are immense.
My name is Titus Chimbo. I am the business team lead here at Zembo. We are an electric motorcycle company which introduces electric mobility to Ugandans. We're building the infrastructure which will have more options for mobility-wise around Kampala and Uganda very soon.
So the story of Zembo goes back to the year of 2018, where me and my co-founder Etienne, who are both coming out of the solar sector, were looking for productive use for solar energy within the African continent. And we found that the transport sector is a very good productive use for energy. And then obviously in Uganda, with the millions of motorcycles used here, we found it a very good country to start our operations.
Many reasons people choose Zembo. As riders, they choose it because of the fact that you are operating at a much lower cost. There's virtually no maintenance fees. You're not adding to the pollution that the conventional bikes are doing. Having an electric motorcycle as an option for mobility in Kampala is inevitable. So it's something that has to happen. We have so far over 20 charging stations and swap stations around Kampala. So on the battery itself, it's a battery as a service. What this means is you do not own the battery. The battery is owned by Zembo. We are servicing that battery to you for a small fee. In regards to other parts, let's say side mirror or a tire or a front light, all these spares are things that you can find on the local market.
Our dear viewers, enterprise value is created when there is real market. And to respond to that market, there is need also to have people appropriately skilled so that they have the right competences for competitiveness. As we look at the market, we know that the domestic market is an important nucleus, but targeting the regional and the global market is also an imperative that we must pursue. So that as we import replace, we ultimately also explore the opportunities for us to promote export of competitive products and services across the mobility industrial value chain. And to help us through this discussion and appreciating what it means in terms of the enterprise value and the market opportunity there is, and on the other side, the skilling, the manpower development and planning, as well as the competences that we require as a nation to be competitive. We have Alan Muhumza and Ms. Thatcher Nachimlimpanga. Alan Muhumza, can you tell us about the extent of the opportunity where we can create enterprise value in the mobility industrial value chain? Yes.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be a part of this conversation today. And as highlighted, my name is Alan Muhumuza. I'm the Director of Marketing and Sales at Kira Motors Corporation. I have a background in electrical engineering, where I did it at Makerere University here at home, but also pursued a master's in technology innovation and industrial development to see how do we then translate the engineering into finished products and package for the market space. I also have a charter in marketing and management professional to see how we can now use industry standards as well as practice in getting our products to the market, but also creating brand equity as we go along. Now, looking at the opportunity space in the motor vehicle industry, it's interesting that one of the biggest shares of our national budget, and it's not just for Uganda, but every other country you'll go to, is mobility infrastructure. Roads being constructed left, right, center, being paved, being expanded, airports being put up to ensure that these are in place. And there's a whole ecosystem around it. And the reason is because over 95% of transportation of either people or goods happens on the road. Then you have the others for air, rail, and the like. So the road infrastructure it's not a surprise that there's a lot of investment going in that direction. Now, looking at the opportunity space itself, starting from the global perspective, the automotive industry or the mobility industry is estimated at about $5 trillion US. That was as of 2017. And it's expected to grow up to 9 trillion by 2030. That is big opportunity. And the vehicle sales themselves speak the same language, the same trend. Because one could say maybe it's because you're getting more luxury vehicles, but there's also growth in vehicle sales globally. You know, from about 97 million in 2017, and it's expected to get about 109 by 2030.
That's global.
That is globally. But if you see the data a bit more, you realize that the biggest growth trend is actually in Africa. 2017, 1.2 million vehicles were sold. And it's expected that by 2030, 10 million vehicles will be sold.
10 million?
10 million. So when you see the growth...
And where do those come from? Are we going to import them?
Now the issue of where the vehicles come from is now the harnessing of that opportunity. Because you realize that if we do not start to participate and to have the conversation now, we will continually be left behind. Not just as a country, but as a continent. And because there is the opportunities right here within the continent, we are seeing a lot of participation and interest by global OEMs to come and set up shop within the region. And it's not just the opportunity of the market, but also the opportunity of the natural resources. We have a wealth of mineral deposits right here. If you're looking at the issue of, for example, lithium-ion batteries, the key ingredients there, the lithium, the cobalt, the rare earth metals, they are all right here. DR Congo has one of the biggest deposits.
And what I'm hearing from you is that it's no longer enough for us to go to international conferences and say Africa has the gold, but France has the biggest gold reserves. What are we doing about the gold we have to have the reserves here?
Absolutely. And that is the conversation we need to now be having. How do we have a 360-degree view of the opportunity space within the motor vehicle industry, such that we can participate holistically? Because what Thatcher will now talk about later is the skilling. Because when you go to the universities, you find there's a wealth of skilling going on. When you go to the use, there's a wide spectrum of the vehicles being used, be it the private vehicles, the buses now that are also saying how can we, because 13 vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants in Uganda, 44 about in the sub-Saharan Africa, and about 182 globally average. You see that majority of people don't own cars. They depend on public transportation. So there's also a whole spectrum of the use. Now the issue is on the develop. How can we also have an entire spectrum to harness the opportunity of the market of the natural resources, and also of the need for mobility.
How do we design? How do we carry out R&D for mobility solutions that work here?
Absolutely.
Because when we start discussing autonomous vehicles in the context of Uganda, we do not have a typical street in Manhattan.
No.
Here we have our street with its interesting characteristics, which require the attendant effort of the Ugandan to describe it in such a way that an algorithm
will appreciate it. But also, actually, on that note, there was a case where facial recognition was being looked at as being racist because it could not interpret a black face.
Yeah.
So it was being trained against...
It was being trained on a certain data set, and which is specific from a certain region. And when you bring it to
it fails to work.
To my face, my face, it's a problem.
It's a problem. But also
everyone else looks like me. So we need to domesticate the R&D, the engineering, the design that defines the requirements and the technical spec that define the solution that goes there.
Absolutely.
And that is another market opportunity.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. If we had more time, we will dig a little bit deeper in there, because we would have loved to see more of these different classes of market opportunity. We have construction mobility solutions. We have high dependence for defense, high dependence mobility, defense applications, health applications, vehicles with coolers. We have mobility for the children. Do you know that actually, for those of us who have very young children, if you wanted a mobility device for your children, you're going to have to import it. Why is that happening? The skilling. Thatcher, could you tell us more about, what is being done, what needs to be done to ensure that we have the right scale and scope of skills and competences to tap into the wide spectrum of opportunities along the motor and mobility industrial value chain?
Thank you, Paul. My name is Thatcher Nashimulimpanga. I'm the product design manager at Kayoola Motors Corporation. I have a background in architecture as well as product design. I'm a product designer, and maybe as a product designer and someone who has worked in the automotive industry, I've had challenges in terms of recruitment. We have a wealth of youth of over 75% of our population who have the capabilities to do, or the potential to do the work that we need to be done. But when you're looking for an industrial designer, or when you're looking for a product designer to hire in an automotive company, you're going to have challenges because they are non-existent, or the people who are present have not been trained to fully tap into their opportunity and their potential to meet the requirements of the market. So despite the fact that we have a very intricate ecosystem in the mobility value chain that has opportunities in manufacturing, opportunities in research and development that Alan has talked about, opportunities in marketing and sales, opportunities in vehicle assembly, opportunities in product development, software engineering, we have, as well as after-sales services, we have most of the youth that we have are really going more into the after-sales, and they're focusing mainly on maintenance services of these vehicles. They're focusing on, how do I maybe fuel the car, which is a skill that can really be attained very quickly and does not actually add intrinsic value to what you're contributing in terms of value addition. So what do we need in order for us to groom people to get into the areas of the ecosystem that are going to attain more value for the economy? So that's where skilling comes in. And what kind of skilling are we providing? We need to provide quality skilling. So we need to provide skills related to engineering. Yes, we have electrical engineers on the market, but have they been trained to serve the automotive industry? The automotive industry is complex in itself, because as an automotive engineer, you're going to focus a lot on more than just the entire car, but also the 30,000 parts that form that vehicle. So you need people trained intrinsically in the automotive industry in terms of engineering. You need people to look into research and development. As a nation, like our previous panelists have discussed, innovation is really low if you look at the innovation index that we have in our country, how are you going to train people to be able to have the capacity and the capabilities to innovate? You need to train them in terms of research and development, to be able to research into the automotive industry, the mobility value chain. You need to give them the skills that they need to tap into the problems that we are facing as a nation and be able to innovate around those areas. So skills related to that can help us not only build the value that we need across the industry, but also the quality of the skills can help us yield greater revenue, because in the automotive sector, it doesn't matter whether you're a technician, whether you're an engineer, as long as the value of your work, you're paid per value of the work you're bringing to the table. So we need to go into that area of skilling and ensure that we are not only increasing the quality of skills we are providing, but also tapping into the wealth of youth that we have in the population to enrich them to go into the automotive sector. But at the same time, I want to talk about emerging technology. Uganda, we have a lot of used vehicles on the market. So if all the skilling we are providing is around used vehicles, we are never going to compete globally. So we need to have to look at what's happening in the global market out there. Alan has talked about electric vehicle market. He has talked about opportunities related to autonomous vehicle technology. And this is what's going to happen. In a few years, maybe 20 years, we shall have more self-driving cars on the market. So how are you going to train your people to be able to maintain those cars? So you need to go into skilling, not only about the technology that's already on the market, but about the future technology as well. You need to teach people how to manage electric vehicles, how to manage autonomous vehicles, how to manage shared vehicle technology like what SafeBorder, Uber, and all these upcoming industries are doing, so that you can be able to compete on the global market. So if we need to know that if we skill in our labor market, currently the labor market in Uganda in the automotive or transport sector, as it's referred to in most of our papers and publications, we have about 300,000 people participating in the industry, and that includes both direct and indirect jobs. But these are people that are mostly in downstream segments of the ecosystem. After sales, marketing, dealerships, bonds. But you need, if you want to increase that number, for example, you talked about Africa, the target is to make over 10 million, to sell over 10 million vehicles by 2030. So you need, for every 60 million vehicles you make, you need at least 9 million people. So if we are to skill our people and direct them towards the automotive sector or the mobility value chain, we'll note that Uganda, with its goals and visions of producing over 500,000 vehicles, will need at least 150,000 people, directly and indirectly employed. And that's a large percentage of the labor force that can not only contribute to tax revenue, but can also contribute to improved revenue on a personal level. My personal income will increase because I have a high quality job that is going to give me a lot more money than I would earn if I was just cleaning a car or if I was just sweeping the road. So definitely automotive skilling is a very important aspect that we need to tackle if our industry is going to compete on a global scale, and it's something that the government has to push, but it's not just a government issue, it's something that has to be pushed in collaboration with private sector, because most of the institutions for training we have right now are in private sector. Government has training institutions, but mostly at the higher education level. So if we want to attract young people who make up the majority of our population, we need to start training them right from high school. We need to get them involved in the industry. Value chain actors need to go into schools and see what students can do, what can be done at that level as they bring them up towards the higher education institutions, where now we will have targeted aspects to do with engineering, design, innovation, design thinking and solving problems, so that we can create a holistic system around skilling and labor markets. Yes.
Yeah, I find this quite interesting, and I think it's speaking to the evolution around the education or the skilling machinery of the nation, so that we can integrate the foundations of what we need to deliver the mobility industry. And as you spoke, I was looking around this vehicle, and when I look up here, I see some of these rubber fittings, and I'm like, okay, are we scaling people for this? I see steel work, metal work. I see aluminum work here. I see plastic welding. I see tailoring, cut and sew. I see plastic injection molding. I see SC systems. I see electronics. I see the integration of digital technology in here, and I'm thinking, how do we evolve the entire education machinery to give us the skill and people with this kind of competences who are ready, so that when they come to us to work with us, we are able to move quite quickly. And it's going to take all of us to have the right interventions to see that we realize that, and we move away from the legacy education system, which focused on giving us a blueprint that enables us to get the next grade to the next grade and to the next grade, without looking at what the market really needs to move us forward. Thank you so much, Thatcher and Alan, for quite an interesting discussion. Now, as we move into the closing session of the Mobility Industrial Value Chain talk show this morning, I'm going to give an opportunity to just 4 of our panelists to come and give us their closing shots.
Amanya Mbitiwakira Moses, nasangibwa Salama Lodi, Kubakaida Motors and Used Academy. Tuze tukola project ezenjawulo. Kazuka Uganda 1 nga saloon ka. Ndamu tukola Uganda 2 nga pick up. Kadwale tuzemu tuze project yeno eyakuva ku mafuta edde ku batteries. Empaka zino baita smart Benz zino obuzibu obw'ekisumuluzo. Ekisumuluzo kya sensitive nnyo. Kata kifa oba okisuula toddamu kugivuga. Era abasinga bazinda bangi nnyo bazipakinga waka. Mpigama katokewo enteekateeka tandike ogesa kuzina motoka zetulina zino tuteeke mu system ey'amasannyalaze. Naye tujja nga system eno ejja kukola bulungi nnyo motoka za wano. Kubanga ndiyo bwe banga etambula tojja kubanga ogichaginga. Nguluma utako batule n'okuba serefu iyo nyini esigala yo chaginga. Bobanga otadde system nga yo chaginga kijja kwangulira nnyo omuntu w'omukyalo ow'omukibuga okugigula. Ate n'ekirungi president yagamba emmotoka enkadde tuddamu mu Uganda. Ate eziri mu Uganda balanyi baze batazisuula. Ekirina okuziyamba okuzikendezaako kola system eno gitadde muno, so oziteeka mu kawundo, so oziteeka mu ipusamu, so oziteeka ne mu loole. Okusinziira kye tukozeeko kino n'etaasi gye tukoze tusuubira ntugenda kugasa nnyo eggwanga lino nga tukola tuwonya okwonda bw'ensi.
Dr. Cosmas Mwikilize.
So I'd like to borrow the words of John Lewis. He said, if not now, then when? If not us, then who? So I think the time is right, and it is prime for us to stand up and be counted and make a difference.
Wonderful. Shackles off, hands on deck. Martin Roy Rukago.
Thank you, Paul. Absa Bank, as a Pan-African bank, has demonstrated its willingness, its desire, its appetite to ensure that there is support given to the SME players to become significant contributors to the growth of these value chains. That's on the private sector side. The opportunities available, we can ensure that what is brought up as ideas is brought into reality.
Edwin.
In the year 2015-16, Uganda imported $51 million of motorcycles. 17-18, Uganda imported $75 million. 18-19, we imported $77 million worth of motorcycles. This can be reversed. It doesn't have to continue this way because the growth rate is 6.4% increase in import volume of motorcycles. This has to stop. It's important to appreciate that societies all over, knowledge, skills in a society accumulates over time in incremental process through process adding one bit by bit. But also it's important to know that actually knowledge and skills can degrade if you don't keep progressively accumulating the knowledge. So we believe our effort in electric technology is one of those efforts, national efforts, that we must pursue. We must consolidate as a country and keep on accumulating incrementally so that as a country we can compete.
Developing our knowledge incrementally for competitiveness. Ricky Rapper Thompson.
Thank you so much, Paul. I mean, as Safe Border, we stand for community, safety, trust, and affordability. And we commit and will continue to do whatever we can to make the lives of the people who enjoy our service, especially the border community, better, the lives of our customers better, and we'll continue to bring new innovations that is aimed at bringing that exactly to the population. And we also commit to being part of any discussion, part of any innovation that is aimed at making our city safer, better, and also uplifting our country and creating more jobs for the young people that are out there that are looking for other opportunities. So great thanks to the team at Kira Motors, great thanks to the teams at APSA, great thanks to the teams at Innovex, great thanks to the team at International University of East Africa, PSFU, and the Office of the President.
The Mobility Industrial Value Chain Talk Show, as part of the celebration of the National Science Week, was brought to you by the Secretariat of Science, Technology and Innovation, Office of the President, under the leadership of Honorable Dr. Monica Musenero, in partnership with Private Sector Foundation and Uganda Broadcasting Operation. Special thanks to His Excellency the President, who has been an ardent champion for developing the indigenous mobility industrial value chain, and all our partners and the participants in this talk show. And from the convener of the National Mobility Talk Show, as part of the celebrations of the National Science Week, my name is Paul Isaac Musasizi, the chairperson of the National Mobility Think Tank. Bye-bye.